And we will move to the general consent calendar. Are there any board members that want to pull off consent calendar items? Okay, Board Member Hanson.
Hi, I'd like to pull off 4.6, a special education annual performance report.
Okay. Is there anything else for board members? So do we just take a motion? Yeah. So if there's anybody that'd like to make a motion on the consent calendar? Board Member Belknap.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion to accept the general consent calendar. Is there any discussion to that motion? Board Member Hanson, are you waiting? Okay, this is going to get confusing. Okay, seeing no discussion, is there all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Okay, Board Member Hanson.
Okay. On the annual performance report for special education, as I took a look at this, there were 30 targets we were supposed to meet, and we only hit 13 of those. So that was a little concerning to me. So I've asked Leah, and I think she's probably here somewhere, if it's okay with you, Chair Cummins.
Yes.
If she could come up, and I've asked her to tell us which ones she's most concerned with, what she's concerned about, and what they're doing to improve based on this all these missed targets.
Go ahead, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board Member Hanson. Thank you for reading it so carefully and for asking the question. We are...
Excuse me, do you mind introducing yourself?
Oh, sorry. Leah Voorhees, Assistant Superintendent of Student Support. In special education, we are concerned about the decrease in the number of targets that we have met as a state. The way this report works is all of the data that is examined that comes in to our data warehouse, to our UTREC system, related to special education is analyzed, aggregated, and then reported back to the federal government. And originally, about 7 years ago, for most of the targets, we examined all of the data, reported baseline data to the federal government, and then did a statistical analysis to determine appropriate annual targets to improve the data year by year. And then since that time, some of the targets have changed as requirements from the federal government have changed, as our test changed when we moved to SAGE from CRTs, when we moved to the DLM from the alternate assessment. So some of the targets have changed since that time, but that's the process every time. We analyze the data, we report baseline data to the federal government, and then do a statistical analysis to determine what an appropriate annual target for improvement would be. So the targets that we have had slippage in, which is the federal term for we went down, we regressed instead of made progress, that we are concerned about, to your question, Board Member Hanson, are the participation in assess, which you as a board have discussed quite a bit in the last couple months related to our ESSA plan. The number of individuals, students with disabilities whose parents have opted them out of taking the assessment has increased dramatically in the last 2 years. The federally required target, which we did not get to choose, some of these targets the federal government chose for all states and territories, is 95%. And we are significantly, in the last couple years, moving down, and last year got below that target. This year went even further below that target, so we're at 93%. So we missed those 2 targets, which we used to have very high participation rates in Utah, some of the highest in the country, and our participation has decreased dramatically. Just to note, the participation waiver that you submitted related to the ESSA would not apply to these targets, because these targets come from the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is a separate federal law. So if that waiver is approved, these targets will still stay, just for clarification. Other targets, the 2 other targets that we are concerned about specifically, and for reference on the summary sheet, the participation is target 3B, the one I was just talking about. The next one that we're concerned about is number 8. That is parent involvement in the special education process. Utah has high parent engagement and parent involvement, which we're very proud of. We can always improve. And how this is measured is we do an annual survey. We do a sample of parents from the largest 5 school districts in the state every year, and then we have divided all of the rest of the school districts and charter schools in half statistically by demographic characteristics, and we survey 1/2 every other year. So all 5 every year, and then half of the rest every other year. We got new targets last year because we created a new parent engagement, parent involvement survey last year and sent it out and got new baseline data and created new targets. This year, our parent involvement scores went down. That may be a sampling issue. It may be that parent involvement has decreased. Let me talk to the sampling issue first. Because we survey the largest 5 districts and then half of the rest every year, a lot of the parents who were surveyed were from different districts than the previous year. So we have a different sample of parents who were surveyed. And we only have 1 year of data. So it's very possible that in that second group of parents, we do have less parent involvement than in the first group. So we're doing a pretty intensive analysis of the responses to each of the 10 questions on the survey per LEA and providing technical assistance to each LEA who did not meet the target this year. And we have actually hired a part-time parent involvement specialist. You know Cheryl Ellsberg, who also works for Title I. Title I and special education are now splitting her services so that she can work half of her time on this particular issue, helping LEAs improve parent involvement, because that is a fundamental principle of the IDEA. Okay? So that's the sampling issue. But we have also noticed an increase in the number of complaints, the mediation requests, and due process hearings in the last couple years. So we may actually have diminished parent involvement. There may be more parents that are unhappy with what is happening in their student special education program. So we're looking at that very seriously and deeply. And that is another reason that we have decided to split Cheryl's time between Title I and special education. She's working with every one of the districts and charter schools who did not meet the target last year. And we're really excited about that. So we jumped right on trying to improve that particular indicator. The last indicator that we're particularly concerned about is number 13. That is compliant transition plans. In Utah, students have to have a transition plan starting at age 14, a post-secondary transition plan. So we are looking at what are students going to do, students with disabilities going to do once they leave us. Do they have the knowledge and skills to go on to competitive employment, to go on to independent living, to go on to further education, college, technical college, any kind of further education. The last 2 years, those having compliant transition plans has decreased. we have noticed as the number of LEAs increases that new LEAs, new charter schools, have really struggled when they have secondary students, because obviously elementary charter schools and elementary schools in districts, this would not apply to, because this is just 14 children who are 14 years and older. New charter schools with secondary students really struggle with compliant transition plans, and I discussed this with the Finance Committee earlier in the fall. And as a result, and as a recommendation from Board Member Hansen, we have created 2 new positions in our office to work specifically on compliance monitoring and compliance mentoring, and our number 1 focus is on improving our transition plans, because this is an indicator that we can improve. This is dotting I's, crossing T's, professionals really understanding what is needed. And there's really good research to support, which I have presented now at three statewide meetings, and we'll be presenting again at a statewide meeting in August. Research to support that compliant transition plans actually equal better services for students with disabilities, because when the transition plan is compliant, it guides the team into a better discussion about the services and supports they're going to help the student be ready for college and career. So just dotting the I's and crossing the T's, that may seem like just extra work, but it isn't. Research shows that it actually makes a difference for services and supports for students. So those are the ones that we're most concerned about, and those are the actions that we have taken immediately to improve them.
Thank you. Board Member Hansen?
I was just wanted to tell Leah, thank you for letting us know about that. I appreciate all the information and all the work we're doing. And you're right, transition is a huge key. We hear from parents all the time whose kids are just sitting in the basement playing video games after school. We want them to be out in the communities doing the things that they can and participating in life. So I appreciate that.
May I make one more comment?
Yes.
So this is information that I shared with Board Member Hansen, not directly related to her questions, but I think is important for all of you to know. I presented this information in depth with the Utah Special Education Advisory Panel last week, and they're the advisory board to you that is required in IDA for special education. And they asked that I make a slight change to this document. So if you read this document last week versus now, it has changed slightly, because when we submit this information to the federal government, they determine, based on statistics, whether we made progress, whether we maintained, whether we had slippage or no slippage. And those are those categories that I've reported on the right-hand side of the summary document. The Special Education Advisory Panel asked me to change the language to if we made progress at all, even if we did not make enough progress statistically for OSEP to determine that progress was made statistically, that I changed the language to demonstrating that we made progress, that we are going the right direction, that we're trending up. So just so you know, I made those changes based on the recommendation of the advisory panel. OSEP doesn't care one way or another, so.
Good. Board Member Reby?
Thank you for your hard work on this. I'm wondering, with parent input, I've been to a number of IEPs, and it's very intimidating for our parents to come to these, and it's a hard process for them. I'm wondering how we are reaching out to our preschool kids and getting them in sooner, and how we can include different languages in our paperwork. How many languages do we have our paperwork in, and do we provide interpreters? Because these are the problems that I have seen. People don't understand coming in to the process, and then once they're in the process, sometimes there's a language barrier.
Can I respond?
Go ahead. Thank you.
Great questions, thank you. So the law requires that we provide our rules, our procedural safeguards in in as many languages as we have a statistical need. There's a formula for that information, and as a result, we do an annual review through our equity section of what the percentage of languages that are spoken in the state are, and then provide the documents. We translate the documents into those languages that statistically meet the criteria. Currently, that's 4 languages, but we translate everything into Spanish. But we also have Vietnamese is one of the 4, and a Slavic language, which I can't remember. It's not Russian, but a Slavic language. But interpreters or translators, depending on what the language is, generally use the word interpreter for American Sign Language and translator for other languages, are required in meetings. Utah does not have a specific certification for translators. So we have provided LEAs with guidance about how to determine if the translator is knowledgeable and skilled, like using your 16-year-old child is not appropriate. Using your neighbor is probably not appropriate. But Utah doesn't have a certification, so we can't say you have to have a certified interpreter. So that's an important issue. So as far as preschool is concerned, we provide extensive technical assistance, both in collaboration with Baby Watch, who provides services for children 0 to 3, and with our LEAs, who start providing services at age 3. And Utah, though definitely there are glitches, 2 of the indicators on this summary are related to those transitions. Both indicator 6 and indicator 11, and we do have significant compliance on both indicators, but we are always making improvements.
Hey, Vice Chair Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for taking the time to explain this to us. I am wondering, in relationship to this, but also just in general, do we have anywhere a know your rights type of thing? I had and not just in IEP, but pre-IEP. Mm-hmm. We do. Okay.
Yes.
I had someone reach out to me this week asking that, and but in relationship to not just IEP,
the whole
pre-IEP,
process.
I'm sorry, I'm just talking more general than that also.
Yes.
Not just in the special ed area, but in testing. I mean, the gamut, everything. You know,
so
do we have
one
for
for special ed.
Rights?
It's
Okay.
called the procedural safeguards.
Okay.
And it's very specific to the rights related to you're wondering if your child may have a disability to your child exits special education and everything in between. You were looking at records.
Thank you.
Everything.
But not a comprehensive overview of everything. Thank you.
No.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone that wants to take action on this particular item? Board Member Hanson?
I move that we receive the Utah Annual Performance Report for Special Education.
Okay, the motion is to receive the annual special education report. Is there any discussion to that motion? Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Okay.